House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that the House is moving to establish an independent commission to investigate the January 6th Capitol riots, and it would be similar to the group that investigated the 9/11 attacks.
Host of Pushback and friend of the show, Aaron Maté, joins us now to discuss this development. Great to see you, Aaron.
Good to see you, Aaron.
Great to be here.
So listen, there are questions that we all certainly have about what went down and specifically the security failures. But when you talk about a 9/11 commission, you're talking about something that lasted for 15 months and resulted in this 585-page document. And I think there's justified fears here that whatever is found is going to be used to further enlarge and embolden the national security state.
Yes. I mean, I have the same concern, especially at a time when, if there is to be an investigation should be done, it should be taking a skeptical, adversarial approach to the national security state that allowed this to happen. Because the fact is that if you look at Trump, his behavior was reckless and it's worthy of condemnation. But had the security been properly fortified, had intelligence agencies done their job and recognized this threat, which some officials did, there wouldn't have been a mob. The Capitol would have been protected. And when I hear Pelosi talking about establishing a commission, and I listen to Democrats throughout the course of the impeachment trial, I don't hear much, if any, calls for accountability from the national security state. And I find that very worrying. And as you indicate, this commission could be used to simply just continue that whitewash.
Yeah, and Aaron, this is something that really bothers me, and it's something you and I, we've talked about here on the show so many times, is about the lack of skepticism that these multi-billion-dollar decisions happen, and then nobody blinks an eye. So, for example, the National Guard deployment. We know that it's already cost $500 million. I walk past these people every day. And I read recently from Fox News, the reason that they are staying in the Capitol, mind you, thousands of troops at the cost of untold millions, is because on March 4th, some QAnon people have talked about maybe coming to the city. So we are talking here about the continued deployment for weeks at the expense of millions because possibly some QAnon folks could come to Washington. How is this not something the Metropolitan Police could not easily solve if they were deployed there? And why do we just have this lack of skepticism about troops deployed in our streets for no discernible reason?
Yeah, I think it's a total PR stunt in response to the security failure on January 6th. And the irony of that is that Steve Sund, who was the head of the Capitol Police before he resigned after the mob attack, he said that he asked security officials in the Capitol from both the House and Senate for backup before January 6th. And both the House and Senate turned him down. The House Sergeant at Arms reportedly said it was bad for optics to have troops there. So now after the security failure, when the threat is no longer there, this was a one-day thing, there's no way there's a mob coming back to storm the Capitol. Now D.C. is subjected to essentially a military occupation, and nobody bats an eye. We're supposed to all just see all this as normal, and it's strange, and it's like we're responding to this terrible event with all of the wrong responses.
Yeah. And now they're good with the optics. Now they want the optics. Aaron, the other piece of this that we've been covering that I think is extraordinarily important is, as you said, rather than the national security state being castigated here and saying, looked at a critical eye, how did you let this happen? Instead, you immediately saw people like Adam Schiff, other sort of national security state former officials coming out and saying, we got to have new laws, we got to have new tools, we got to have more power. We even saw one person say we need to treat these domestic terror groups as if they are insurgents in Iraq or Afghanistan. What do you make of that direction?
Well, it's a classic response to a terrible event, which is that people in power will use it to increase their own power and increase control and surveillance over citizens. Same thing happened with 9/11. Thankfully, there have been some progressives in Congress who wrote a letter strongly opposing any passage of new domestic terror laws and accurately pointing out that what we have on the books is already extremely excessive, so we don't need any more. And it's a part of just this overall climate where, especially the last 4 years with Russiagate, the national security state has been deemed the answer to everything. So Trump, for example, instead of opposing him on his policies, it was the FBI that was going to save us. Well, where was the FBI, for example, on January 6th? So when you're not rooted in policies that really help people, like, for example, giving them the $2,000 stimulus checks that you promised, you have to look to create outside threats and things to scare people about, and to scare them into submission to policies that will just increase domestic power centers that already have plenty of power, more power than they need.
Yeah, and Aaron, you tracked this from the very beginning because all of your warnings became right, which is that when you tie yourself to these people, the John Brennans and others, and you lionize them, immediately after January 6th, you have Joy Reid on her show unironically say we need de-Bathification. Like literally, de-Bathification here in the United States. John Brennan going on saying, oh, we need the CIA, literally saying we need the CIA to operate on American soil and begin investigating these people. Just completely outrageous things, which were pushed back upon once upon a time under George W. Bush, now empowered to heights that we don't even know in terms of the amount of trust that they have with your average, mean, Democratic voter.
That's what happens when you, again, do not tie your resistance to real issues that affect people's lives, and instead to, Russia conspiracy theories and the idea that the national security state will validate them and end the Trump nightmare, that you encourage this sort of chauvinism and militarist approach. So that's why in Trump's first impeachment, Adam Schiff, by the way, who spoke for longer than all of the House impeachment managers in the second impeachment combined, Adam Schiff himself talked endlessly about how we have to arm Ukraine so that we fight Russia over there and not over here. And then in the second impeachment trial, Joaquin Castro, he was speculating that one of the Capitol mob rioters was going to steal a laptop and give it to the Russians, and that the Capitol mob incident itself had undermined our ability to basically interfere in foreign countries abroad, essentially launch mob attacks in different forms on countries abroad that we want to overthrow. That's what happens. And that's, I think, helps explains why this impeachment, like the first one, was so not on the radar for so many people, because it just doesn't really register to people's lives. And it lives in this fantasy world where we're worshiping national security state officials and coming up with fantastical conspiracy theories instead of focusing on real problems and the real U.S. dysfunctions that led to January 6th.
So true. Didn't Hillary Clinton float that maybe Trump was talking to Putin during the
on
run-ins?
January 6th. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And do you know who she said it to? To Nancy Pelosi. It
That's
was on
right.
Clinton's
That's right. On her podcast.
That's right.
Yes.
Unreal.
Aaron, we need to crack down on misinformation in podcasts.
Yes, we do.
That's what we need to
That's
crack
the real
down.
problem.
Yeah, see? Yeah. I can play this game too.
Aaron, thank you so much. It's great
Thanks,
to see
Aaron.
you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
A lot more rising for you after this.